Okay, time for our panel discussion. And we've brought on a few other people here. I didn't, our star commander is not Roger Cressy. I have an update on that that's coming. But we have Edelweiss. Thank you, Adel. We got Tim Blamis. Are you out there?
Yeah. Hi, Charlie. I'm here.
All right. Abby, you out there?
Hey, Charlie.
All right. We got it. Okay. I'm here. And so what we're going to talk about today is what's the best way? And we might have some disagreements here. I mean, we've got a lot of weaponry out there and different strong personalities on this panel. So we're asking, what is the best way? Should you take a course, use SQL, use R, use Python, read a book, work with a consultant, hire a data scientist? There's a lot of different ways to do this. We just heard Phil give his whole experiences. Abby was also obviously integrally involved with all of that and then works with other consultants, as does Adel and Tim and actually our host, Dan. So we thought we'd just kind of open it up and have a little bit of a discussion and maybe a little bit of fun on this one. So,
hey, Charlie, shouldn't we address the fact that we're getting invaded here?
I am not seeing that yet. Is there an attack from outside somewhere that's happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sure.
Oh my God. We've been invaded by a stormtrooper. Holy mackerel. What is going on there? Hello, stormtrooper. Can you, oh, they disappeared.
Just disappeared. Wow, got beamed out.
Oh,
No, it's
there
beamed
they
back
are.
in.
Whoa, who are you here to take away?
I'm from the First Order, dude.
It's from the first
First Order.
Uh-oh. I think he's out. I think he's here to get Tim.
Yeah, maybe.
What else? Do you have any messages to share, Stormtrooper? No messages.
No.
Do you have any
Okay.
lightsabers or any weapons with you? Thank
No.
God.
We're safely ensconced in our offices.
Wow. This is a thrill. Do you have an opinion on the best way to do machine learning?
No. Okay.
All right. Stormtrooper,
I like the background. That's
thank
cool.
you so much.
It's like-
These are exciting times. I love Zoom. You can get people from all over the galaxy. It's amazing. All right. So I think we're going to go back to our have the stormtrooper participate in this panel, and I'm going to continue to share my screen. Am I still sharing my screen? Yeah, I think I am. So our panel it has Tim Blamis, VP and Analytics Strategist at Blamis Software. We have Charlie Berger, who's pretending to be Captain Kirk. Edelweiss, who works at IT Convergence and has done a lot of work in this area. Abby Giles Hay, Chief Data Science Officer from Vertex, that I think many people know. She's also an Oracle ACE Director, and she used to be the data scientist at the UK NHS, of which Phil Godfrey was speaking in those days when they did a lot of amazing things there. So we have a lot of experience on the panel today. And then we did have our Starfleet commander was going to be Roger Cressy, but he is in Texas where they've lost all their power. So instead, we have Dan Blamis, who has volunteered to step in. Thank you so much, Dan, for keeping everything civil and keeping the discussion going. So with that, I'll leave it to you to take us away, Dan.
Well, thanks everybody for participating in the panel today. I'll go ahead and introduce everything, and we're going to use UI, notebooks, SQL, R, Python. What's the best way to work with machine learning? How do you get started? So how do you best way to accelerate as well? Once you actually get started, what's the best way to accelerate the success for the near term and the long term? And so we want to encourage you all to participate in this as well. We'll have the chat, the Q&A open. So we'd love for you to put the questions in the Q&A box in there and address that as we go. There's not as much, if you will, prepared to go through all of this. This is really the chance to answer your questions for people from the analytics and data Oracle user community. So let me start by asking, I'm going to pick on Charlie first. Charlie, for you, I know that you share this sometimes in emails and in blogs and such. What do you see as the best way to actually get started with machine learning. It can be sometimes intimidating. How do you suggest people actually start up?
Well, I defer to all the people that are actually doing it. So I do want to say that. I mean, I have my own point of view, but I think what's most important is the people that actually do it. So I'm interested to hear what they have to say. But I'll tell you the thing that I think is the easiest, best way lately, and that's that thing. And I think it's starting out. It's going to get better. But I find the new live labs that are now available. There's a few of them, and there's going to be a lot more of them. I'm supposed to be doing one on fraud, the one I was showing before that Abby and I had worked a little bit together on. And there's one on the wine data set. We have ones for the notebooks initially, but also we should be having ones for the Oracle data miner, which is probably the easiest way to get involved with things. But I think the live labs are just so easy. You just kind of go up there, click, click, set out a system. You don't have to install anything. To me, that would be my quick answer today, this week.
Okay. And let's go around, Adel. On my screen, you're next to Charlie. So go ahead and, what do you see as a way to get started? Or for people, let me broaden this a little bit. If you want to understand what machine learning is capable of, where would you start for that, Adel?
If we are talking about only Oracle machine learning, which is the topic, I think, for this panel, I think it will depend on which you have right now. So for example, if you already have an Oracle database on-prem installed, you can start using, for example, Oracle Data Miner, which is a graphical tool that will be easier for you to use, very intuitive. It's very easy to use, very graphical. So you can create some machine learning models and compare these machine learning models to see which will be more accurate. This is, we are talking here, if you're starting just start playing with it. Start playing with Oracle machine learning. If you're going to start playing with it, and if you have an on-prem database, I will go for Oracle Data Miner. If you don't have anything installed, I think that the Autonomous Data Warehouse, always free option, is the best place to start. Just go to the always free tier, create an instance, and that's it. So you can create machine learning notebooks. So you have a lot of notebooks that already come as an example that you can play with it, or you can read it. And there is a lot of material. And in fact, in the same notebook, you have a link in the example notebook. So you have a link that will give you to the documentation and things like that, that you will have more knowledge of it. But we are talking here if you are playing with it. If you are doing a real project, I think, as Phil already stated very well in his session, the most thing that you have to focus is on data, and having the accurate data and cleaning your data, and what is the objective that you have for this machine learning model. But if you just want to play because you are going to start and you want to have this knowledge, or Oracle Data Miner or machine learning notebooks, it will be the best way for me.
And Tim, you're next on my screen. Tim and I work together on stuff, but I'll go ahead and ask you, what would you do actually to get started with this, and also get to understand what some of the capabilities are, Tim?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I would say it's all about clear thinking and thinking with data. And really what we want to do is we want to look for evidence. And so, getting started is about that. I think the advice I would have for people out there would be, really we see three major ways that people get started. One is to do a training class where there's an overview of the algorithms and the business use cases, particularly the business use cases. And so that you learn how you can frame and approach a question and apply machine learning to it. And then what we usually do after we do an overview for a couple of days is set aside a workshop day where we go through data within the organization and we talk about what the material we just covered and what might be a good use case, okay? And that has generated some really good results. The second way to do it is to start with a pilot project and kind of have something that you can work from and grow out from. I would say it's particularly important if you do that, that you have some level of executive support. We've seen a lot of initiatives that kind of start in a silo and they're working really hard and it either doesn't get visibility or it doesn't get support or it's really hard. I mean, and take a pilot project that has some meaning for the organization, but isn't the hardest problem to solve. And so sometimes we go in and they're like, oh, we really want to solve this really super hard problem and use the, the most advanced algorithms. And it's like, maybe you don't want to start there. And then the third way to start is to do a bring your own data workshop. And we've done this at clients where we'll have 40, 50 people and we'll put them into little work groups. And there'll be a table of people from operations and a table of people from sales and a table of people from finance. And we'll literally have them work on their own data sets and kind of we'll walk around and help them work through. And we know that somewhere in that room, somebody's going to come up with something really good. And so it's a little bit like taking the venture capitalist approach. We don't know, and the chances that every single project are going to produce the kind of results that NHS is getting are pretty low. So what you want to do is spread your bets, okay? And within, again, you need a few days to do this kind of thing. You need to go through how to use some of the simple machine learning and have people think about their data and have people start to experience it and clean it a little bit, because you don't know, you have to shape it. And they may not know how to shape it before they come in. But through that process of a few days of working together, we'll get some really, really interesting results. And we've had people literally walk out with millions of dollars in savings because they found something they didn't know because they visualized it or they used some unsupervised learning or whatnot. So I would say, and then everybody who did the workshop gets to share in that success. And it's not just a pilot project where it's how much did one project generate? There's so many different things can go right or wrong with a project. So anyway, those three, and we've seen all of them work pretty well. I don't know if that's too long an answer, but
no, worked great. Abby, over to you.
I think I agree with like everyone's suggestions. The extra one I'd probably add in there is I'm really conscious that a lot of organizations are either very new to data science or maybe they don't, have those experts coming in on site to help them. Reach out, try and find a mentor. I know, for example, in the Oracle ACE community, there's lots of us in machine learning, there's lots of us doing data analytics, data cleansing. Reach out, get a mentor, even if it's just, a quick email of, hi, can you just help me with this? There's a lot of us out here that are really open to helping people get started and kind of getting that journey started. I think the mentorship is really good because I've watched a few data scientists go down this rabbit hole of trying to learn every single algorithm in the database to the nth degree, and that's going to take you years. So just put the brakes on slightly. As Tim was saying, like you need to kind of get a pilot project. You need to show a little bit of return on investment and things like that. But sometimes a mentor is someone who can just sort of bring you back out of the weeds and kind of just say, hey, hang on a second. Awesome that you want to go down that road and that you want to learn everything about these algorithms. That's great. But let's just come up a level to what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and therefore what's the impact going to be? And like I say, I've seen a couple of data scientists go down that road, and you just need to just drag them back up again and go, just pause for a second. So sometimes it's as simple as find yourself a mentor, find someone who you can chat to, who will be open and honest with you and give you that advice just to kind of pull you back out of the weeds a little bit.
Okay. And I see next is the Stormtrooper in the lower left of my quadrant. I don't know if the microphone's working on the helmet, but anything for you to share, let us know. Well, I don't hear anything. So I'll also challenge all the people on the panel, if you have, it occurs to me getting started is not just starting to play with data. It's also appreciating the business problems you may need to solve. So since we're going around, if you have some URLs with, for instance, some demos that could be shared that allow you to see, allow the audience to see the art of the possible, if you can just put those in the chat. You know, I know, pick on Charlie. I know, Charlie, sometimes your email signature has some places to go just to be able to see some demos. Same thing, Abby, as we've talked about stuff, Tim and Adel, as we've talked about things, you know, there's various demos that are available that start to illuminate the art of the possible, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's not just about playing with the data, it's also appreciating what can be done.
Yeah, can I make a quick comment about some demos and some data sets?
No,
You
no comments. No comment. The stormtrooper's going to come and get you.
You tend to see it after it's done. And so it's looking like a really great, you know, meal that somebody has prepared.
Yeah.
And they've worked out all the recipes. And you don't have to do the full spread, you know, to get value and to have something that's really satisfying. And so I think sometimes there's a tendency people aspire to the demo, and the demo, they've already figured out what they want to know. They've already, you know, shaped the data. And sometimes we have to be careful about that. Sometimes we, you know, may aim the data rather than learning from the data. And so there's always that tension in doing these things. So I think it's great to find the examples, but there's also a little bit of a danger of, you know, looking at a food magazine and thinking you've got to be perfect in how you cook the meal.
Yeah, I think
in the kitchen and playing with the spices.
I agree with Tim. Like, I know that when I've had new grads come in who, a lot of the universities here in England now teach Python as a main language or stats language coming out. So, you know, the transition to OML is not as hard sometimes. Some find it hard. So it depends what their background is. But one challenge I've set them is, you know, there's a site called Kaggle where you can do data science competitions. There's a really simple one called the Titanic on there. Go and do something like that. The answer is there in in Python. And if you can read Python and understand it, challenge yourself. Can I now do that in OML? And take something like that that's been solved in Python, but challenge yourself to go and do it in OML instead.
Yeah, I think that's a good story, and I've seen Abby give that, you know, talk using the Titanic data, and it's fascinating because you kind of solve it as a problem. Like, are you going to live or die on this thing? And I was going to say, there for me, when I first got into stuff eons and eons ago, I came from more of a statistician kind of community, so the concept of machine learning was all sort of new and different. I know one of my favorite books, I know there's been 1,000 good books written, but I like some stuff written by these guys, Michael Berry and Gordon Linoff. I think they call it customer data mining and data mining techniques. Back then they would call it data mining instead of machine learning. But those guys, I think, wrote really good explanatory kind of books that were all like case studies. Like, here's an insurance company that's trying to do this. Here's a retailer that's trying to do this. And let's talk through the problem. Let's talk through the kind of techniques. They kind of said, we're going to apply this. There wasn't really any kind of code or GUI in there so much as it was conceptually working through the problem. And I think that's the kind of exercise you need to go through to do what sort of, I think Tim had said, the art of the possible, but also as like Abby says, do that in, you know, read a book, but also do an exercise that's sort of simple and achievable, like the Titanic data set. The thing that I see, and we all do it, because I'll tell my own story. I got one of those riding lawnmowers, because where I am in Boston, I live outside of Boston, so I have to get a mower that you ride on, one of those ones little handles like this. And I'm like I'm going to say guys, I don't read the manual. You throw the manual away. I hop on the damn thing, start riding around mowing my lawn, because I don't read who reads the manual. I want to apply machine learning to my own data now, that kind of thing. I can go forward. I drove it into a tree because I didn't know how to like stop it. I didn't read the manual. I actually drove into a tree. And don't do the same thing with machine learning. Don't take OML, fire it up on your own data, and press go, because it will break. You will get bad things. I think Phil had the, you know, I don't know, data and ML equals bad output. Take the Titanic data set, take some of the demo data sets that shipped with the product, and work your way through, the nice demo data on the demo parking lot and stuff. That's my, I couldn't echo that, more. You guys just said.
We do have a question that came in. Tim, you have something to add on that?
Well, I think that's fine. I think most data is messy, and that's fine too. And that's why I would generally encourage people to start with some kind of what they call unsupervised machine learning. And where we usually start is with clustering. And the reason, and I personally love the hierarchical clustering algorithms in Oracle machine learning, because I think they give you a sense of the structure of the data. But the great thing is there's no right and wrong answers. There's no sense of precision, except for how close a particular member is to a particular centroid or whatnot. And so you can characterize a data set. But unlike supervised learning, there's, what all we're doing is applying math to a data set and saying, hey, what's similar and what's dissimilar according to this particular algorithm, whether we're partitioning it or whether we're using some sense of nearness or whatnot. And it's not right and wrong. It's just what the data tells us about itself according to math. And so that helps you get engaged and start to understand and learn more about it. And so it's not as, and it's robust to dirty data, because it's going to show up in its own group, or it's going to show up, somehow as being different. And so and it's really different than kind of traditional BI, business intelligence kind of thinking, where we slice and dice things, and we set the filters, and we set the prompts, and we make the selections, and we organize things according to, product in this dimension, that dimension, these attributes, those facts. This is all about letting the data tell us what's interesting. And so that's why I generally, we recommend kind of starting with, clustering, or maybe market basket analysis, something like that, where we're looking at, what are the, events that are related to one another. Anyway.
Anything else, folks, before I move on to one of the questions that came in on the panel?
I wanted to ask Adel and Abby, you guys agree with, because I argue with Tim from time to time, and I say, Tim, you're full of it. That's crazy. I would never do that. Why would I do clustering? Because it's unsupervised learning, and I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this, and I mean, I use clustering. I've helped customers with it, and I've got good stories. But I wanted to ask you guys as practitioners, do you guys do clustering a lot or a little? Abby and Adel?
I'll let Adel go first.
It depends. So sometimes, for example, we have projects when people want to create like a loyalty program or something like that we need. For example, we had one of our clients that they have users, like their own clients, but honestly, they have an idea, a perception of which ones are the most valuable for them, according with the money, with the revenue that they have in for them, but they weren't sure. So they have an idea. They didn't share. That was a very, very good thing. They didn't share with us what was their perception. So we work with the data. We get the clustering, but I think that one thing that I disagree with Tim is that you also need to work with the data. It's not like you are clustering something, because you also need to be, I don't know, you can have data with, 100 columns, and these 100 columns are not valuable for that. So I think you have to work with the data first, no matter which machine learning model are you going to use it. But we got the result, with Oracle Machine Learning, with Autonomous Data Warehouse Cloud, and we showed the results with Analytics Cloud, with Oracle Analytics Cloud. And they were exactly as they have the perception of this clustering. of their clients. But so when we have this type of things, yes, it's the only way to do it. So you need to use cluster, but not as probably as the first thing that I have to work in a project. The first thing that, was a specific requirement from a client. But if I have to play by my own, with my own data, maybe clustering is not the first one which I will start it. But this is the type of project that we have to work in this, and basically to have the to realize which are the type of clients that they have. We got a very good results with Oracle Machine Learning with K-means.
So I think for me, I kind of touch on what you said is very much just like, if you don't know the data, get to know your data, like love your data, like just appreciate it, just love it, give it some love. Okay, so describe it. Where's your outliers? Is a column like so ridiculous in there? So I do have a weird example, and I was wondering if Phil would say it, but we once had a data set brought to us that had a 73-year-old male that was pregnant. I don't know if anyone else is seeing something wrong in that analysis, but that was that moment where you go,
maybe it was from another galaxy where that was more common.
Hey, who knows? But yeah. I guess it's always my go-to story is if a 73-year-old male can be pregnant, go and love your data, because there's something a bit strange in your data there. And touching back again on what Adel said was like, what about kind of, in the data miner product, you've got things like the Explore node that really graphically brings it to life to you.
Profile the data.
Exactly, profile it. In the ADW, do use the analytical functions to do like max, min, average counts. Just love your data. Just take that moment to appreciate your data before you even start throwing K-means or anything else over the fence. Yeah. Just give it some love, and find that male 73-year-old that's pregnant, so that it's not going to upset your machine learning algorithm further down the line. I know, Charlie, you're a big supervised learning fan. I know you are. I know you are.
Only supervised is the only thing to use.
But I think the general challenge when you go into businesses is whether the data is labeled appropriately, and therefore are they ready for that? And sometimes they are great, fantastic, but sometimes they need to do that data love to appreciate whether it is labeled appropriately or not to move on to the supervised learning. So I guess I'm always this person who says, go and give your data a bit of love before you even pick up the data science manual. Just put the data science manual to one side for a minute. Just go and give your data some love.
Yeah. And another thing that I totally agree with you, Abby. And so sometimes we have clients that have a very good clue of what they want, and have this realize what is the data and how many historical data they have, and if it's accurate or clean or whatever. But most of the time, we have clients like have, I don't know, historical data from 20, and it happens often with some government institutions in Latin America, at least 30 years of history. And there's no business rules, well documented. There's nothing. You have to, put your hands on, and as Abby said, give love to the, and you need to find out, and you need to ask questions to the client. Because if you go to, okay, you have the data, we want this, and you just apply the machine learning model, you will have a totally disaster. So you need to understand the data and have this communication with the client or with the person, with the business user that is a stakeholder that really knows the business, and just understand, okay, we have this. Yeah, that is because 15 years ago we had this problem. Okay. So they just forgot about it. So this type of things that happens in data, it's something typical. So we need to, take time, and in my own experience, usually the machine learning project is 70% or even more working with the data.
Yeah.
So I want to follow up on that, ask a question on that. You all have said you need to understand the data. perhaps even before you turn it into machine learning. What does that mean? Do you end up, for instance, adding additional columns to the data set that you have? Compute a ratio between two different columns? Do you cluster them yourself and come up with, top, rank them, do a simple ranking, and then how much manipulation of the data, maybe outlier analysis? Abby was talking about, the 73-year-old male that's pregnant. Do you end up, in effect, changing the data before you turn it into the machine learning, or is that somehow masking some of the important business logic that you have with that? What do you do with that? So I'll call this a jump ball. Who wants to jump in?
I'm going to jump first, soon as
Okay.
it was my 73-year-old male pregnant.
Go for it.
It seems only right. So for me, when I'm doing this exercise, I'm not changing the data. The data for me is usually coming from a, what they call central source or a single source of the truth kind of thing. And they're pretty precious about this until you start finding these things. But especially like at the NHS and other companies, like I've worked in tier 1 banks and things like that, actually identifying those errors is actually then tracing back operationally, where's it going wrong? And that, it might sound like it's nitpicking, and sometimes operational staff don't like that, and it's fine. It's a hard conversation to have, but actually it could be saving money. It could be data quality issues upstream that actually we're masking something. And by doing that analysis, we didn't need the data science per se, the machine learning. We needed the analytical functions that highlighted that operational issue. So sometimes it's a mixture of DS and kind of just your traditional know your data kind of stuff. How I would go about it, it depends on the data set. And to a certain extent, that can be how many columns I've got, how much, how many rows, things like that. There's a lot of different moving parts depending on the data set you're looking at. So for example, I'm a big fan of principal component analysis or finding correlation between columns, because again, why send both columns through to the ML? Is one better than the other? Is there a lot of nulls in a certain column and it's not really going to add to the model? These are the types of questions I'm asking myself as I'm starting to explore it. So I'm thinking depth, breadth, all that sort of thing of the data before I'm selecting any machine learning models. And some of that also is like, is the data skewed? So I work a lot in fraud analytics. That's like one of my hot topic areas, and the other one being equality in data. So kind of how skewed is your data? Like, especially in fraud, we're talking less than 1% of transactions are going to be fraudulent. So I'm really in the weeds of, where are those transactions and what am I looking for? In the equality question, I'm kind of saying, if we train this machine learning algorithm, is it all male data and us females are going to get declined a credit card every time? So I'm kind of asking those questions about the data. I'm kind of looking at it from different angles, but to understand it better. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah.
That was good, Dan. I'll take a stab at this one. I kind of go to the extreme, I guess, and I would say, don't show me the data you have. Let's talk about what the data you wish you had. Let's see if you can get it. Because people come and they say, well, I've got his address. I don't care what his address is. I've got his telephone number. I don't care about his telephone number. I've got his date of birth. I don't care about his date of birth. I care about how old the person is. I care about how what the distance is from their address to the store that I'm trying to sell something from, and things like that. I am always impressed by different experiences that I've run into, either myself or working with others. I know someone was telling me about trying to predict doctor no-shows for a hospital up in upstate New England. And he was riddling me, what do you think the top variable is? And I was going back and forth. The answer, that was the snow, the distance. Do they have a translator there for the patient? All these kind of things. The top variable turned out to be, were you ever, or anybody in your family previously, a no-show? Because if you have a track record of being no-shows, then maybe that's the most important variable rather than your age, your income, or your gender, or anything like that. I have another one where Bob Haberstruck, I used to work for me years ago, did this one, and he was predicting how many newspapers and magazines should I drop off at the kiosk for tomorrow morning, because I want to get the right number. And one of the big findings was, well, whether or not they sell lottery tickets, which I thought was profound. But the very next obvious question was, did you include the prize amount? Because if it was a huge prize, you probably sold more. Oh, that's a good, thing. I think if you sat there as a domain expert and thought, what is the data if I could click my heels I wish I had, like how many dropped calls have you had recently versus over the long-term average of dropped calls, all those kind of engineered features is what we call them. That's, I think, the best place to start. So I don't, I always focus on it's the domain experience and the problem definition as being much more important than the algorithm and the data you are presented with.
Yeah. Yeah. Tracy McLean made a nice comment in the chat about data enrichment using your master data management system or your master data. And what Charlie's talking about is super important. It's not the raw data, it's what can you use the raw data to create. I love the distance example because that is, really powerful, really powerful. I would also say that.
So does that, I'm sorry, Tim, I'm going to interrupt. Does that mean you should actually calculate the distance and add that to your data? I'm getting to how do you augment?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So it's taking the address and saying,
spatial
how
graph.
far away is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you add a new column,
Tim, you did something like that with I don't know if you mentioned your customer, some sort of distance between, stuff like that. Yeah.
I mean, this gets back to the classic frameworks that we use, like in marketing, RFM, recency, frequency, monetary, right? And so, and I'm going to go a little bit like we work with a lot of the Pythonistas too, that coming out of school, and as they call themselves, not my name, their name for themselves, where
Romulan to me.
Just be careful, the stormtrooper's still here.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys are welcome to say "Okay, boomer" to me, by the way, if you can. But the classic simple frameworks are really powerful, and the reason they've persisted for a long period of time is because they're particularly useful. That applies to Crisp DM. So if you're not familiar with that, I would encourage you to Google it and understand how that cycle works with terms of understanding the business problem, understanding the data, and iterating back and forth, and then preparing the data, and then applying the machine learning algorithm. Everybody wants to do the training, the model building, and it's the fun part, but it's not the biggest part. It's maybe not the most important part. Thinking carefully and clearly and using frameworks and tools to do so about your data is really important. And so, RFM, with how recent has somebody purchased, right? In terms of time, how frequently do they purchase, and how much do they purchase? And then kind of building out those variables, Dan, to your point of saying, how do we build that out? Those may be very, very useful in terms of building a prediction model for which customers are likely to defect, or likely to purchase more, or likely to respond to a next best buy offer, or something like that.
And that's just a SQL query inside the database. I mean, you're just leveraging the strength of, that's why I think combining that kind of smarts and knowledge and domain expertise within a couple of algorithms at the end, it's a powerful mixture.
Yeah. So I would say frameworks are really important, right? Getting those classic, sets of questions that we can use to apply to a data set is particularly useful. And it's not about writing scripts. I don't write scripts. I grow scripts. I copy and paste into them.
I steal something else and edit it.
I fight with syntax, but and maybe other people have this skill where they can sit down and write a long script from scratch. That's not a skill I have. And so I don't apologize for it. I just say, hey, we're going to grow it iteratively. I'm going to start with something. So I need to start with seeds, which is why I like Charlie's examples, or I like other examples from Stack Overflow. I like something where I can start and then build it out. And yeah, anyway.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I think everyone that knows me knows I'm not an excellent coder. I mean, I can code with pulling my hair out of my head and working with it. I can do it, but it's painful and it's tedious. And so I did a lot of the original notebooks that shipped with the OML notebook. And so they're simple because I have a lot of fingerprints on those things. but I took some of the example code that guys like Boreana and Joe Yarmus and all the PhD development guys in the development team wrote as examples of how to use the algorithms that they developed. I just took those little code examples, which are out on GitHub, and I kind of took the gist of that, made it my own, modified it a little bit, and then put it out there as a notebook. And that's why I think we're also doing the GitHub sharing and stuff like that. But I tell you, some of the best data science type of guys I've seen, bar excluding the guys on this call here, are ones that well, the drag and drop GUI is super easy, right? Click, 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 drag, drag, and that's the best way to go today, hands down. If people are asking that kind of question, but in the next 3 to 5 years, as everything sort of goes up to the cloud a little bit, some of those things are going to change. And I find that if you just take the example notebooks and you literally just say, here's one for anomaly detection. I'll use our stormtrooper as an example here, okay? I'm going to try and find the anomalous stormtroopers, which I forget which episode it is, but there's an episode where it's one of the newer ones where they have 2 people, there's a woman and the other guy that are like anomalies, right? They're the stormtroopers that defect or something like that, right? So if I'm going to train on and use Tim's thing about a lot of data, I'm going to use unsupervised learning, anomaly detection. I just download the anomaly detection notebook that goes with OML. I change the data set from, I don't know, customers to stormtroopers, and then in the stormtroopers data set, I know I've got the height. And I don't know about that stormtrooper, but he doesn't look like he's that big. I think he's kind of shorter. And so if I take all my stormtroopers and I check the height and the size and what planets they visited and all these different kind of things, I might be able to separate some stormtroopers from other stormtroopers and start solving a problem. So that's what I would just do, is take the, when the auto ML comes out, that's going to be super, super easy because, 6 clicks and you got a model. And so I would gravitate to that immediately. I think that'll be the best way to go. But right now, if you're going to the cloud, take somebody else's book and steal it.
So Charlie, this is what I'm concerned about with AutoML, if it's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm concerned about this hyper focus on what's the best algorithm.
Yeah, I agree.
And particularly with regards to classification and regression and those kinds of things, which is most accurate. And because we do so much work with the data, the sense of what's the best understanding is a very different question than what's the most accurate. And there's a tendency I find should we, be doing a neural net and how many layers does it have and all this kind of stuff. And instead of saying, what are we trying to understand and predict? What data are we using? What are we not using? And to think carefully and thoroughly about the issues at hand. And I just think it's way overvalued because most domains that we're working with are open domains. They're not closed domains. And a lot of the traditional stats people and kind of what I see as the new auto kind of functionality is treating it like it's a closed domain. Like we're in Vegas and there's a game with rules and outcomes, and we're trying to solve that, as opposed to, no, it's a stock market and there are thousands, if not millions, of variables, and we're going to pick and choose which ones we're going to include or exclude. And because it's open, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about what evidence do we have that we can present that gives us a hint. So
yeah, I agree with you. I don't think AutoML should be a black box, and we try not to make it a black box. We kind of.
I know. I'm not. And I'm kind of pushing buttons. I know.
But, yeah, no, I agree with you. The other where I thought you were going to go, and I'll let Abby and Adel comment this. I'm always impressed by one of my favorite quotes is from George Box that said, "All models are wrong, but some are useful." And I always get it. These people are looking at this model here. If I let it run a little longer, it gets from 87% accurate to 87.275 accuracy. And I'm kind of going, what the blank? I mean, you're not doing any predictive modeling in the first place. You're just doing, reporting, and now you got to, it's like you got a set of dice you can go to Vegas and kind of pick the winner with now. Is 87.275 going to make that big of a difference to you? Given where you were, I think it's just do something, and iterate and do a better version and keep going. So I think I'm violently agreeing with what you're saying there. I don't know, Abby, Adel, any guys comments on that, or Stormtrooper? Any comments on the perfect model?
Well, I'm not seeing anything. I do want to bring the audience into things.
Yeah.
Abby, Adel, anything before we move on?
No, I agree with what the guys are saying. Yeah, I also have concerns about AutoML. So
Yeah. Okay.
Send me an
Good.
email. Send me an email.
And I want to encourage people to put stuff in the Q&A. So I want to handle one that was put in. Thanks for putting this in, somebody. Can you speak to the differences between Oracle data mining and Oracle machine learning? For example, when one should be used versus another? Then does pairing OAC with OML yield the similar features available in Oracle data mining? I think it's a great question. And while the panel is speaking to that, I want people to put into Q&A, you know, this is a great example, bring up a great panel, bring up your questions, you know, what algorithms to use for this business case or something like that. We want to make this more interactive. But let me turn that over. What are the differences between Oracle data mining and Oracle machine learning? And what about using that with OAC? Who wants to jump?
So,
I can jump.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
no, go ahead, Tim. Well,
Tim talked enough. You go, Adel. I can tell because he's my brother.
okay, so there is a change in the name of the Oracle data mining and Oracle machine learning. So right now it's Oracle machine learning. The previous name was Oracle data mining. I think there was probably a confusion because I mentioned the Oracle data miner. And so
yeah.
that is why. So I will clarify what is Oracle data miner and what we can do with Oracle data miner, with which products and everything, and about machine learning and autonomous and analytics. So Oracle data miner is an extension of SQL developer. So you can, if you have used SQL developer, you can have Oracle data miner. You have to create a repository which is a schema in the database. Because of that, you can use Oracle Data Miner, which is a graphic tool that it will use machine learning, right? It will use Oracle machine learning, but it will be more graphical. You know, it's a graphic tool, so it's easier for you to select parameters and create the models, and it will have also a graphical comparison of the model. So it's nice. It's really nice. And this UE, you can use it with any Oracle database on-prem or with Oracle Database Cloud, but you cannot use it with Autonomous Data Warehouse, okay? But for Autonomous Data Warehouse, what you have is the Oracle Machine Learning notebooks that are included in any version of Autonomous Database, the Always tier or the other ones. So you can use it with Oracle Machine Learning notebooks for any Autonomous Database that you want. And one important thing, and in a very good job that the analytics team in Oracle has been doing, is the integration between Oracle Machine Learning in the Autonomous Data Warehouse and Oracle Analytics Cloud. Because, and this is one thing that I presented in February in the Analytics and Data Summit when we have it, you know, on present, sniff. It was about one of our clients that we have Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse Cloud with Oracle Machine Learning models, and we show the results with Analytics Cloud. In that moment, there wasn't a very tight integration as we have it right now. And I mentioned that you need to use the right tool for the right job. So despite you have Oracle Machine Learning notebooks, which you can create some simple visualizations, the best way to visualize the results is obviously Oracle Analytics Cloud. But right now you have the possibility to create the machine learning models in Autonomous Data Warehouse, which is the best thing because you have the database with all the power on Exadata. And you can import it, the Autonomous Data Warehouse Cloud models that you created, machine learning models that you created in Autonomous, and you can use it, import it, and use it in Oracle Analytics Cloud, which is great. So you can use it and you can apply it to some data sets that you have in Oracle Analytics Cloud. So this is a very tight integration that last year, basically, we have it from Oracle. So I think that is the best way to do it. And if you can play with it, you can do it with the always free trial. You have 300 credits also. And you can create your Oracle Analytics Cloud instance and play with both. So create a machine learning model and Autonomous and import it into Oracle Analytics Cloud and use it for some data set that you have been playing with OAC.
So, yeah, exactly. And for those who are out there who are analytics people, basically what you're doing is you're using a push down functionality. So OAC, because this model has been registered with it, is able to execute down in the database as opposed to up in the analytics server. So it's very, very fast, very powerful, and I agree with Adel 100%. It really starts to bring kind of the visualization, the visual analytics capabilities married with the machine learning and other database features, you know, that we would prefer to do there. There's just a stronger engine to do things. So yeah.
I think the only one I've seen as just a caution to the audience would be, obviously in Oracle Analytics Cloud, you do have the data flows that you can make some machine learning algorithms. And I have seen customers then try and compare that to a result out of the OML, just to be kind of get everyone on the same page here. They are different algorithms. So you can't compare and contrast in that sense. And as Adel says, and Tim, use the right tool at the right time. So if you've got a small data set and maybe it's just, you know, is this even going to work? Kind of maybe OAC is the right place to do. But if you're looking for secure, scalable, enterprise level, push it down to the database. Get that database working where it should be working, not, you know, trying to do it up in the application level. So yeah, I think that's the only other bit of advice I'd give is just be careful if you try and do the compare and contrast. I have seen people and then you kind of point out that under the hood, they are different things. So just be aware.
Yeah, and the OAC type team, and I always get asked this question, what about OAS? My understanding is that they're also pushing this down. Philippe and Gabby and Rajesh and those guys are pushing all this stuff down to OAS as well. It's just a little bit lagged. And we're starting to work with Stefan Schmitz and the FAW guys. I think you'll start to see going forward some pre-built models to solve specific things. I think all those doors are opened up. But I was going to ask the here because I don't do it just because of old school and what I'm used to using Oracle Data Miner or the notebooks or whatever. But you guys ever just say, here's my data set, and before I do any ML in OML, do you just like visualize it first in OAC? Because OAC is pretty good for that kind of stuff. And just kind of, Adel, you gave a great talk. Use the right tool for the right job. And that's what I took away from that is, why don't I just jump over here and, you know, and we'll get tighter and tighter integration. Philippe's coming on in 2 or 3 weeks. He's going to talk about the latest integration advances they've been doing. And so it will get better. But do you just start out with OAC sometimes to explore your data, guys?
Yes, for sure. So in order to analyze the data, for me, the best tool possible is OAC. For me, I'm a graphical person, so I need to see it, you know, and it's very, very easy to use. So I like to analyze the data with OAC. But again, when I have to create a model, I won't use Oracle Analytics Cloud for that. I will use Oracle Machine Learning in Autonomous or on-prem or whatever, but you have to use the power that you have in a database. It's the best way to do it for me.
Well, we've had the capability in OBIEE. We could call functions, and we could do Oracle R Enterprise when before it got renamed, and we could do SQL stuff. So we've been using those tools together for many years, and generally speaking, the further down the stack you go, the more power you get. So it's been kind of a best practice for us to do, you know, the heavy lifting in the database and not in the BI or the analytics layer.
I'll also mention on that point, I've seen a preview of something coming out in OAC that's a data profiler that will show what the data is going to, what the data looks like. Is it skewed? I think, Abby, you're the one that brought up the skewness in the data. And there's a nice profiler coming out from OAC in a future release that will give you a sense of that. You know, are most of my survey results all in Massachusetts? And so if I look at it by state, surprise, surprise, Massachusetts is going to have the highest volume because, well, that's where the respondents came from. You know, that type of thing. This profiler will help out a great deal with
Yeah.
that and providing.
I mean, it also speaks to the importance of normalization strategies and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I come from so originally I started my Oracle journey as a junior database administrator. So I'm very much a coder. I like SQL developer, and there's lots of little tricks you can do in that gets you like the skewness of the data, and you can pull out quite a lot of stats. And I always harp back to this, and I know a lot of people do talks on this, but there's so many analytical functions in there that you can use. And basically what we're seeing Oracle do now is really latch onto that and enable things like profilers for OAC and things. And that's just like music to my ears, to be honest. So I just see it going strength to strength from here.
Yeah, I was going to say, for all those who are listening and maybe you're saying, hey, I didn't know all this stuff was out there and was there's so many features and functions. I'm always impressed after 20 something years at Oracle now, it's free. So only for the last, I'm going to say 14, 15, 16 months, all this horsepower that we're talking about is if you have an Oracle database, even if you don't, if you have the always free tier, and you could do a lot of cool things. So, what's the best way to get started, I guess, is the topic of this discussion. There's 1,000 different ways to get started, but focus on a problem. And you could solve a little script or a notebook or something that I don't know, solved a problem for predicting, expense report fraud for SAP expense, reporting systems, or predicted employee churn or whatever. You could even set up a whole business that just sort of schleps the data up to your autonomous database cloud thing or whatever. It runs a couple of algorithms, spits out a result in a dashboard or Apex or whatever. All this stuff is free out there for you to take advantage of, and it's just exciting times going forward, I think.
All right. Well, I'll make another plea to our audience. If you have something you're thinking about doing, we're always interested in the business cases. Put it in the Q&A in there, and we'd love to have the panel address it.
And Dan, one thing that I would like to add is if people is kind of shy to put their questions right now, we have the Slack channel. Okay, I just put it again in the chat.
Thank you.
If you want to join us and continue the conversation there, please go and do it. You have an invitation to our Slack channel. So all of it more plus than hundreds of other people that we can discuss about these machine learning topics or Oracle in this cloud or whatever you want.
Yeah, I would also add a lot of the machine learning stuff is literally learning new words for concepts you already know. That's all it is. And so sometimes people get caught up in the names of algorithms and this and that. And at the same time, they're pretty sophisticated in how they think about sports gambling, And so there's a lot of this that you probably already know. And learning some of the concepts and how to apply them and kind of taking it from this domain and moving it to a business domain or moving it to an enterprise domain is not as hard as you might imagine. And so I think 80% of the population is capable of doing this work, literally. Now, maybe there are some that just, for whatever reason, aren't gonna jibe with it. And it's at different levels, okay? Not everybody has to have a PhD in statistics. You need to be open to learning about it and be willing to understand it and engage with the language of mathematics. But it's not something that is you'll ever learn all of it. So learn a little bit of it. It's fine. It's good. And yeah, and I think there are a lot of people that kind of hold they want to do it, but they're worried about making mistakes. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Yeah. Anyway, I just want to throw that out there.
Tim, I totally agree with that. My sort of litmus test on that when I talk to people is like, hey, could I be a data scientist or such? And I always say, do you know the difference between a mean and a median? And if they go, oh, no tough questions, you're probably not cut out to be a data scientist. You're probably not really a math guy. But if you say, oh, of course, that's the normally distributed versus skewed, and of course, I like that kind of. If you're analytically curious and you know your domain, like shoes or retail or healthcare or whatever, I think you are perfect, to be a data scientist using, everything else you already know. And in fact, we were saying, what was the opening question was like, what's the best way to get started? And I wrote a note to myself here. Most important, and some people are going to maybe take offense to this, and hopefully it's not the stormtrooper, but do not hire a data scientist. I would contend. Grow one from inside the company, right?
Yeah.
Pick somebody that already knows the domain, knows the difference between a mean and a median, maybe knows a little bit of SQL, maybe knows some R, some Python too, but don't go out and hire the PhD, open source, data scientist, expert that knows nothing about your business, and grow someone from inside. I think that's my recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, I'm part of a math club in Kansas City. I know it's geeky, but
that's geeky.
Before the pandemic, we got together on Saturday mornings and drank strong coffee and did math. And I kind of came to it late in my life, and we worked through a linear algebra textbook, and we read. And this was like, I didn't have the background, but I had the interest.
Yeah.
And so, that is just, and you start to see the connections, and you start to put it together. You don't have to learn it in school. You can learn it just reading academic papers and looking stuff up and reading Wikipedia, because you're interested in it, and then trying to do the problems from some source. And it really helps. It really helps having some technical chops when you start working with this stuff. And the only way to get that is to do it and just be interested in it, and and let other people push you, so it's a good thing.
So I'm going to be controversial.
Yeah.
I'm going to say there's no such thing as a data scientist, but there is a thing such as a data science team. And that's because if you ask for one person to know all of the stats, all of the domain, have the communication skills to give this to the business, be able to do the visualizations, to, technically be able to get all this data integrated, quality checked through your data warehouse out the other side,
right?
They don't exist.
No.
It's a purple unicorn somewhere in the universe. It just does not exist. Well, it might be the Stormtrooper, to be fair.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a little bit like, and I object to the term citizen data scientist, as if somebody somewhere wants to put some other people down. I really, and I know they're trying to help, but I think it's not help. I think it's fine. We're engaged in the project of learning from our data. And, it's, anyway, a specific subject in math, linear algebra. Calculus is great. Calculus doesn't help you with machine learning like linear algebra does.
Yeah,
so
I'm linear algebra, and I love Bayes' theorem as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and statistics. Yeah, Bayesian statistics, linear algebra. Inferential learning is what you want. I would say. And Abby, you're agreeing, or Adel, or Charlie? I don't know.
They're all good.
Yeah. So it's
all right. So there is a question that just came up, but is there any specific subject or kind of math? Maybe this was just what led you to this, Tim. Help with machine learning. Usually all that I see is probability and statistic courses. Is that correct?
Yeah, my answer is you want linear algebra.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Tim already answered that question.
Yeah,
okay,
so,
it's fine.
I think my other one for that would be, so there's one for me is like, what's the impact of machine learning? So, as you're learning all this stats, understand how it impacts wider than just the machine learning. So I know, Charlie, we've chatted about this book. Hannah Fry does a book called Hello World. So it just gives you examples of how machine learning impacts our lives. So as you're learning these, in that book, it uses statistics to show how it has impacted our lives. So as you're learning this, maybe try and learn it through, through the impact on life, so that it makes sense to you as well, and you can start to put that real world context to that stats, because, you know, some people will get lost in the linear algebra mathematics and go, whoa, that's too much. But even if you understand what that linear algebra means to my everyday life, okay, that might be more helpful to some people.
Well,
I totally love the Hannah Fry person and books, and I read the book. It was gifted to me for Christmas one year, and we tried to get her as a speaker on this channel one time. I just put in the chat window one of my favorite books that I started out with in machine learning, a good book by Michael Berry and Gordon Linoff. I used to work with these guys. Maybe it was during my formative years or whatever, but hardly a single equation in the book. It's more or less how to think about problems. Is it supervised learning? Is it unsupervised learning? Is it market basket analysis? I mean, the thing about machine learning is it's machine learning. You don't have to have a PhD in statistics to know whether or not the data is normally distributed or not. The ML is going to do all that stuff for you. You just kind of have to know which category of technique to point at your data. And I think that's a really good book for sort of wrapping your brain around the concepts without getting too deep in the math.
And I just put a course that I really love it. It's about machine learning in Coursera. It's from Stanford. This guy is, so you learn all the maths, but he's so clear to explain all the maths that I will love to have it when I was, you know, a kid and go to the university, because it's very, very, very clear. You can go to the training and Coursera. You can, you know, take the courses. If you want the certificate, you need to pay something, which is a small amount of money. But if you don't, just you can learn from it, and you can go to the course and get all the sessions and all the hands-on labs. So it's, for me, that is one of the greatest trainings that I have seen.
Yeah. I would also say math is something you do. That's been the best lesson I've taken away from the math club. We talk about it and we do it, and we read academic papers, and it's interesting and engaging. And I'm the lucky guy who gets to do this stuff. Everybody's like, "You're living the dream, Tim."
Living the dream.
So anyway.
So we're starting to get close to the top of the hour. Charlie, anything else that as we wrap up this panel session, anything else that people want to make sure that is part of this, and then maybe a few
one last
what Analytics and Data Summit
data
OUC is and such.
One last quick comment, because I just made some notes about things. I think these days, especially with Zoom, it pays to have something like you saw Phil Godfrey with the Center of Excellence and all that kind of stuff. I think it pays to have like a Zoom advisor for a couple hours a week or half a day a week or something. Like some of you guys know, I'm trying to learn how to play the guitar, so for half an hour, I meet online with my guitar instructor. He says, this is good, this is bad, And I think in the same way, I think you could hire, any one of the consultants that are on the call here or whatever that, or watch YouTube videos, but you get a lot more out of it by the human interaction, because they say, no, that's not a good idea. You think you're doing it right, but think about this instead. And I just think hire an online coach is a good way to go. Something to think about.
Okay. Anything else from panel members as we wrap up? Well, thank you everybody for being part of the panel. Charlie, any closing slides that we need for the audience?
No,